company,
Sure.
and I walk in and it's a startup. There's 9 people there, and it's in a strip mall. And when I walked in, it smelled like tires. There's 4 seats in their lobby, all mismatched. Like, if Uber was around then, I probably would have gone boom, boom, got my ride, and just
Yeah. Street Smart podcast back again in the lounge studios today with James Hulse. So James, thank you so much for coming in and being a part of the show.
Yeah, no, pleasure. I've been following the whole platform for quite a while, watching Oilfield 360 kind of rise up and what's been happening with Upright Digital. I'd like to think I was actually one of the first people that Josh interviewed when he was kind of getting this thing going. I think it was like 2017 or 2018. He was kind of going around to a conference at OTC. And he had a booth set up outside of his brother's exhibit. And he's like, come sit down. And I sat down with him. I put the headphones on and I started talking.
Sportscaster headset.
Yeah, the headset.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I started talking and I'm like, I sound good.
Yeah.
I sound good. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this. What are you talking about?
Got so much soda in my voice. That
Oh,
sounds
dude, I was
amazing.
just like, I could do this, and
Yeah.
and
yeah,
like I could
yeah.
take on Morgan Freeman or something. I don't know.
Well,
But,
he's on a different level. Morgan
oh,
Freeman.
Yeah. He can
guy-
narrate this whole
his-
thing by himself.
That's how I imagine God sounding like, probably, and he has played God's
Yeah,
voice
he usually
multiple
is
times.
the God voiceover.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the go-to. It sounds like it should be anyway. But yeah, and you can give yourself credit for Josh's success, and that's fine, because that's anyone is welcome to do that on this podcast, especially because he's not in the room right now.
I was a stepping stone on the path getting there.
Yeah, there you go.
And just
That's
proud
right.
to be it.
That's
you
one of the
know?
very first ones, though, and so it's hard to argue
Hey,
that
yeah.
maybe you started this whole thing.
Maybe my
but-
words of encouragement.
Yeah, well, he's actually a pretty encouraging guy. You know, he and I got connected, very similar. In I didn't get interviewed, but the guy that I worked for, Aaron Marquez, owner of Wildcat, was interviewed, and I picked Aaron up at the airport and brought him here, and then just sat in there and drank tequila while they got an interview, and then Josh and I, remained in contact since then. And then when I started the podcast, he was guest number 3. And was kind of out of his comfort zone because he's so used to being on the other side of it, and then here we are. So it is pretty remarkable, the platform, and it's awesome to be a part of it for sure. But and that's kind of how you and I got connected. They ran his episode of the Street Smart podcast on Oilfield 360. You made a comment on it on LinkedIn, and I replied back to your comment and said you should be on the show, and then here we are. We were able to pull it together pretty quick. So again, I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to kind of hear your story and get to know you. And as with many of my guests, you asked me, should we have a pre-call? And I said, no, man, I on purpose don't do a tremendous amount of research, and so we're going to learn in real time about each other. So that'll be a good time.
And I like that. That format. I've done a couple other kind of podcast formats here in the last, probably 3 or 4 in the last 4 or 5 years. And kind of the off the cuff, let's just discuss topics, usually has the best flow to it. When that point where we did connect on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
When Josh kind of told his story about, hey, this is kind of how I got to this point and where it started. I love hearing those. Anybody who has experienced some level of success, or at least you're looking at them in that one stage, they've already overcome all these issues and obstacles and frustrations, and all you see is that one piece. It's like, I want to hear the backstory of this. A friend of mine he does mortgages, or I don't know what the stuff is, in Arizona. And one day he posted kind of his story of how I was like, I just took the leap. I was driving Uber at night.
Right.
I was working on my business during the day. He's like, I was 20 hours a day that I was trying to make this thing roll. And all I saw was one day he worked for accounting in Home Depot, and the next day he's got this very successful mortgage brokerage.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, that must be easy. No, he tells a story like, God, I love hearing those stories of what you overcome. So anytime I see those, I eat them up.
Well, and that was the original concept behind the podcast was, I want to talk to entrepreneurs because I grew up in an entrepreneurial household, but I just, for some reason, I'm so risk averse. I've never I understand it. I have a lot of ideas that are probably fairly entrepreneurial in nature, but I just can't take that leap. And I'm amazed by people that can, and their stories always to me seem like, man, that would be a really interesting conversation. And when I started researching the other entrepreneurial podcasts, they were all very much like, tell me about clean recompression, the businesses that they've started. And that's interesting. And those conversations come out, and they're natural to come out because they're inherent to who you are. But more interesting to me was sort of the human aspect of, the human interest behind who that person is and what drove them to start those things. And it's been very, very interesting. And to kind of dovetail onto what you said about people just seeing you at a certain stage in life. I had another person on the podcast describe that as, people think that you're a 20-year overnight success. You've been doing this for a long time, but you just see the overnight success, right? So it's kind of interesting.
It's funny, like you talk about like your upbringing, you're like your parents. They were entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. They were not risk averse. No, and maybe that's what did it. Like my parents, my dad, extremely risk averse. I remember walking with him when he would get his. I was probably 10, 11 years old. The last time I really remember this, going to the bank with him, and he would have his paycheck. This is, I don't want to say how many years ago, but 30 plus years ago, he would go cash his paycheck, take the cash, put it in his wallet. And me knowing nothing about finance or banking, I never questioned why he did that. Now I look back at it, I'm like, that sounds ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But he was so risk averse, like he wouldn't even get a mortgage. He'd rather pay rent, so he wouldn't have to owe money to a bank. It was just to that extreme. And I watched that, and I'm like, taking no risk is the biggest risk.
Yeah.
And that's why I've always behaved that way. Has it worked out every time? No, but I learned every time.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is and of course that's an obvious soundbite now. Taking no risk is a big risk. So that's a great saying, and I do like the way you put that. And you're right. Maybe that is something that when I remember being a kid in the '80s. Grew up in Midland, Texas, right? So oil and gas, and my dad owned a service business, and he was owned a welding and fabrication business. And I remember in the mid '80s watching my dad I was old enough to remember all of this, watching my dad have to auction that business off. And then he went to work for another man, rebuilt himself, and started another business. And I remember thinking, why would you ever start another business? And it has been, obviously I've had a fantastic life. My childhood was amazing. We wanted for nothing. Yeah. But at the same time, I was old enough to remember those things and just think like, well, I don't know how I would deal with that, Yeah. But I'm amazed by people that just, and it's not even that they don't see the risk that's there. It's really this just almost, I don't know that delusional is the right word, but just such a self-belief in what's going on that we're just going to be okay. It's going to work. And I find that just fascinating.
I don't think delusional is that far off, though.
Yeah, well.
If there's a different word that's somewhere between delusional and reality,
I'm not.
Flying closer to delusional.
Well, I used that one because I didn't know another word to use. So that's true. That's a true story. Yeah, but anyhow, let's start at the beginning because that's the best place to start in these things. And so where were you born? Where were you raised? Those types of things.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Mesa, Arizona. Lived there almost my entire life until I spent 4 winters in just north of Salt Lake City in Utah.
You just thought it'd be fun up there in the wintertime? Or?
No. So I'll kind of give a little background. So while I was in Arizona, I was mainly involved in construction, residential construction, which is fairly prolific. It's kind of up and down like oil and gas is anywhere else.
Like residential construction?
Yeah, residential commercial, yeah. And it got to the point where I think it was about when lending kind of stopped one night in 2008. Said, hey, well, this is going to be tough if no one can fund a deal.
No one has any money. Yeah,
there's no deal. There's no money flowing. Kind of puts the brakes on things quick, and so I had put out and got a job. Went into mining, working for Freeport McMoran. My brother worked there. He just barely left. Went to another company. He was there for like 20-something years. Wow. And he's like very engineering minded, a little more risk averse type of guy, but just very, a bit entrepreneurial, but risk averse too. But he's like, hey, come work over here, the mining company. People are always buying copper, which is, more than true, especially what's going on today.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, copper is ridiculous.
Well, I mean.
Production and everything. There's always shortages of copper. Yeah, so worked there and then went to Salt Lake, and that's kind of where I got into energy. we were doing some capital improvement projects at Freeport, and I'm like, well, I have a construction background. There was an opportunity there they were advertising as a construction company building fueling stations. So I thought it was like gasoline, diesel. Went and took the interview. I've never gone so blind to do an interview. So I'm used to, Freeport McMoran, this, Fortune 500 company,
Sure.
and I walk in and it's a startup. There's 9 people there, and it's in a strip mall. And when I walked in, it smelled like tires. Like this place used to have something to do with tires, warehousing or trading. There wasn't like lifts and stuff in the back. They had some warehouse space in the back, but I'm like, there's 4 seats in their lobby, all mismatched. This really rinkety-dink receptionist with a lady sitting there saying, hey, sit right here. I'll call you in a minute, and I'm like, what am I doing here?
Yeah,
Literally, they flew me up to talk to him.
Yeah.
They flew up to talk to him, and I was like, if Uber was around then, I probably would have gone boom, boom, got my ride, and just
Yeah.
I probably would have done it, because I was like, this is ridiculous. And then I went in to the interview, and the guy says, he started pitching, natural gas, American energy independence, the whole T. Boone Pickens line. It wasn't T. Boone Pickens,
Right.
but that whole American energy independence started pushing that, and I'm like, God, this sounds really cool.
It does sound cool.
Mining sounds really stable. This sounds like something people aren't doing. Let's do this, And
Right.
after that, I was kind of converted. The guy that interviewed me, a lot of people called him the evangelist of LNG, Merritt Norton. Still in the game.
Yeah. Shout out Merritt.
But shout out to him, respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he truly was. He converted me that day. When he said those things, like, you know what, I can see your vision. I can see this, and jumped in. It turns out they were building LNG and CNG fueling stations for heavy duty on-road trucks. Which kind of took off and sputtered, and now it's kind of a consistent low user of natural gas. But that's where I got into energy at that point. Started learning everything about LNG, everything about CNG, everything about pipeline transport, midstream, downstream.
In Salt Lake, who'd have guessed?
In Salt Lake.
That's crazy.
In a company that was funded by the largest privately owned natural gas company in China, ENN.
Oh.
So it was like Chinese money going into Salt Lake to build LNG and CNG infrastructure for heavy duty trucking across the U.S.
And they got a guy from Mesa, Arizona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To come in.
It's a global effort, really. If you think about it. It's interesting. You talk about construction in Arizona. I was in Phoenix a few weeks ago, and it was so hot, obviously. And I remember driving, looking at all the construction that was going on there, and they had, the Spanish tiles on the roofs and everything. And I thought, who in the F wants to roof a house in Phoenix, Arizona right now? That would be miserable, number one. But, so
you
when
you're
you're growing
savage.
up, do what?
You got to be a savage. Those guys that do it they are craftsmen.
Man, I tell you what, I nothing but respect for those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, they're amazing at what they're doing, and then the physical demands of it are unreal. The risks are unreal, and also, it's 1,000 degrees outside, and but it's a dry heat, so
Yeah.
that
means your sweat dries very quickly.
That's what I tell.
That's the only difference.
So I was out there for a baseball tournament, and I remember telling someone the difference in this heat and the heat in Houston is in this heat you can sit in shade and it's okay. In Houston, it's just hot no matter where you're sitting. But when you were a little boy growing up in Mesa, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to get into computers. Computers were the new up and coming thing.
Right.
I didn't grow up with a computer in my house. We had a computer when I was maybe my senior year in high school.
First computer I ever had was a Commodore 64.
Yeah, little blinking dot, and you got to do
writing everything in the DOS interface.
Exactly. You're like if then stuff, and learned all that. And I wish I'd have really picked it up. 'Cause I probably could have been a programmer. But I thought, computers, these could be big.
Yeah, this is not a fad. Surely
this might take off. What can we use these things for?
And then of course Oregon Trail hits the scene.
Oh yeah,
amazing game. Everybody dies of dysentery at all times.
Yeah.
I've tried to find an app with Oregon Trail.
Toria.
I was like, surely there's someone my age has created an Oregon Trail app. Yeah. I think there's some out there, but they're not great. And I don't want it to look fancy. I want it to look like the busted ass game looked.
Yeah.
And then I also want to die of dysentery at all times. So
at least half your family die first, then your oxen, and then your cows, and then you starve to death or something.
Right. Well, I mean, sort of by the transitive property, you still died of dysentery.
Yeah.
They did, so you did, kind of thing. So you get up to Salt Lake. and you get converted to, man, this new fad, not a computer fad, but fad of American energy independence, which man, does sound amazing and is amazing, and I wish we'd get back to that, obviously. But
we did it for a while.
We did for a while. That's why I said we get back to it. That'd be great. But from there, kind of, and at that point, had you had any aspirations, or as you were entering into your adult working life, in construction, and then now kind of moving up into the energy sector, are you thinking at all about, man, I think I want to run a business someday? Or are you just like, man, I think I can help out and I want to work hard and those types of things? Where was your mind at in terms, did you have any entrepreneurial leanings at that point, or were you just still kind of like, how old were you at this point, actually?
30.
30?
Yeah.
So like 2-3 years ago then?
Yeah.
So, but at that point, are you thinking like, man, I just need to I'm making a career for myself here? Or are you thinking, I want to learn this stuff and I'm going to do my own thing someday?
I've always wanted to create something different, something new. And that kind of hit me in Arizona, where we were building this beautiful house. And every time we built these great big houses, millions of dollars, it's who owns this house? What do you do? Right?
I think about that all the time. I live up in Conroe. I see these guys in these $100,000 trucks pulling these $150,000 boats, and I'm like, what does that person do?
It's a $300,000 boat now.
Right, but I'm like, what does this person do with their lives? How is this possible? So I get it.
The first one that really hit me, and I can still remember this house, and then the guy I worked with listened to Rush Limbaugh every day. I still hear Rush Limbaugh going on. And I was probably 15 years old. My neighbor, my best friend, his dad had a electrical company. We'd be running home runs, wires and stuff into these in these houses and stuff, running through the rafters, pulling wire.
Nice, cool attic work.
Yeah. Well, at least at this point, it's not like insulated yet.
Right, that's right.
But yeah, it's still a million degrees. But you just kind of get used to it. We'll get on that in a second.
You do.
But the guy who built that house, he came by, and I remember and one of my friends says, "Oh, he has a question for you," because I wasn't going to ask him.
What do you do?
He's like, "What's your question?" And I'm like, "Well, here it is. What do you do? How you do this?" He's like, "I own level or blinds. I invented the mini blinds. Little things that you twist the deal, the little metal ones. Remember the old school ones?
Absolutely.
When they very first came out, you got rid of curtains. He invented that.
Levelor was the Xerox of mini blinds.
Yeah, for a long time.
Mini blinds were called Levelor blinds.
Yeah.
Even when they weren't.
A Xerox, or a tissue, or as a Kleenex.
Right, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Nobody buys Kleenex. There's always all these other brands,
Right.
But yeah, and this guy, he told me this, and I was like, how did you come up with that? Ever since then, everything I looked at is like.
Did you ask him that?
No.
How'd you come up with that?
No, I wasn't intuitive enough to really dig in with it.
That's an outstanding question.
Yeah, it's like, like what? And that, but maybe that would have accelerated what I was doing. But, ever since then, I was looking at things like, what could be done better?
Yeah.
Is there another way to do this that give you some type of, either at least a competitive advantage, if not something to solve some problem that people are willing to pay to solve?
Right.
Because there's a lot of problems out there that people can find solutions for that they're not willing to pay that amount to solve that thing.
Right. Or a lot of times you find people creating solutions and then trying to find a problem for the solution.
Yeah,
which is an interesting ass backwards way of doing that.
It's a rough way to do business.
It's hard. It's a hard go.
So ever since then, everything we looked at, and I had some friend that same best friend grew up with, we're always looking at different things and thinking of these things that you could make some product, something, this and there. So everywhere I went, I always like, what can we do? And nothing really. I think it took me a while in getting a lot of more experience in business.
Well, you were 15.
Yeah,
you asked that question.
Even then, I'm 30, getting into this, and
but
still
fairness,
kind of watching what's happening.
Sure.
And that experience I had with that company in Salt Lake, watching how kind of strategy was built around an emerging or supposedly emerging market, and technology behind that.
What year was this? Was it 2008, 9? Is that what you're saying?
This is 2010.
10.
About when this happened, 2010 to 2015-ish. Right.
Okay. So 2010, I went to work for a gas compression company here in the Houston area, Exterran.
Okay.
And so, obviously in Texas and up in the Northeast, gas was, people understood the power of natural gas and stuff, but it was still, like you said, in 2010, it was still kind of an emerging, like, the idea of American energy independence was definitely an emerging concept at that point. And so when you got to that office and you saw the mismatched chairs and all of those things, you said, man, if I'd had a way out, I would have probably bounced right then. Looking back on that now, has that shaped you in any way when you're thinking through, like, man, these people were probably very well funded, and they were running their business in a way that was, one, in a sort of streamlined kind of, okay, we're in the opening salvo, we're going to figure this out. When you look back on that, you see, like, man, I think that was a good way to do that, or has that shaped you in any way going forward?
I learned a train load of lessons from that probably 5 years.
Yeah.
Massive amount of exposure to all these different aspects of business. I've had a lot of experience in like sales, business development, customer relationships, contracting, global supply chain. There I got to see, everything from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And in the end, turned out it was a really, really, really good example of things to look out for.
Gotcha.
It's kind of like you grow up one way, like my parents extremely risk averse, and that's something that's like, you know what, that was a great example of a very risk averse type of lifestyle. Like, I want to do something different.
Sure.
So this the company in the end, the story around it, and I started writing this white paper that I ended up giving to the ex CFO, saying, hey, I'm halfway through this thing. What do you think of my story here? Am I way off? And he's like, stop writing. This is too much truth.
Yeah, we don't. This go ahead.
Let's not document this.
Also, can we get you to sign this?
Sign
NDA,
this non-disclosure. Like, no. This is just for my own thing. I'm not going with this. But no, those are just a train little lessons. And after that, having gone through that and seen that the way you take things to market, the way that you understand what the market is, what the customers want, what they need, and what they'll pay for, and at what price. Then
and as critical to that is how you identify those things.
Yes, and then how you then share them in a really open and honest way to say, hey, we need to pivot, or they're not going to pay for this.
Sure.
At a profitable rate. Let's go a different direction. And I remember there were a few pivotal points with that company where there was opportunity to pivot and go in a direction that would have turned out to be, looking back now, had we got into that point, would have turned out to be very profitable. Sure. Today. And that company would have been extremely successful, but it wasn't part of kind of the goal, the vision for the company.
Right.
It was, hey, we're focused on this.
And you think that, and that was the only thing that kept them from pivoting, was just the original vision that didn't align with that original vision. Yeah. I've seen that a lot, actually. Yeah. I've worked for privately owned companies all the way up to, like, Exterran's a multinational, publicly traded, huge company, and I was with them when they transitioned to Arch Rock and kind of split all that contract compression off from the rest of it. And it seems, I've seen that many times, where a founder of a company, they have this vision, right? They've identified some issue that needs to be solved. People will pay to solve it, right? So going back to what you originally said, and then when they get into it and they're told by, whether it's a customer or a potential customer or even someone internal, hey man, I think if we just take that vision just slightly this direction, we can get way further down the road. And I've seen, I'll say more times than not, I've seen them balk at that pivot. And and now, as a business owner yourself, how do you safeguard yourself against that when you think through, like, God, if I identify this, if someone brings to me a chance to kind of just go, and I'm not saying like to deviate drastically from the mission, but just slight deviation, what you would call a pivot, right? What are you doing to safeguard yourself against that kind of thing now that you sort of have that stake in a company?
I think you only make that move if you have good market intelligence that you believe. Right.
That's right.
Because if someone comes in and tells them, says, hey, I think we should do this, and he's like, and there's not enough market data or the right customer who said enough or something else, it's kind of like, I could see how they would be resistant to it. Because it's like, hey, I have this plan, and I don't have enough of a reason now to divert from that plan.
Right.
So it needs to, if something like that comes up, like, we need to explore this more. If you're not convinced at that point, it's like, I'm not convinced yet. what would convince me is this. If this is our, this is our prime customer focus. This is like a key customer. If we go to them and say, hey, this is what we're doing, and they're like, and get some just feedback from them saying, that sounds cool. We're probably not going to be a customer.
Right. What?
That's like, what? No.
Well, it doesn't sound that cool then. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
my plan says you're my top customer.
Correct.
And all of a sudden you go to zero. Everybody else goes below zero. It's all right. Well, what would, what makes it happen? What turns it? And I think that piece there, like getting the data, putting the data together, and then believing the data and saying, yeah, let's do this.
Well, I would say probably what you're doing to safeguard then is just an openness to that data.
Yeah, you have to be.
Because there's a lot of times I've seen the person in the position to make that pivot, they're not even receptive to that data because that's not the vision, right? And so I think that openness is critical. So you're with that company now. You're with them for 5 years. You say you learn a tremendous amount of lessons. But then you don't go on yet to found a business, right? And where do you go after that 5-year period?
Stayed in the LNG industry, went to work for a company that was building an LNG plant up just south of Dallas in Midlothian. And that's what brought me to Texas.
Yeah, so now you're back to Texas.
Yeah, well,
Or
in
you're
Texas.
to Texas,
yeah,
not back.
yeah. I
You're
wasn't
to
born in Texas, but got here as soon as I could.
I think that's the saying.
That's the saying.
That's
yeah,
the saying.
true. I love Texas.
I'm 6th generation Texan, so I guess welcome foreigner.
Yeah, growing up in Arizona, like there are very few people that were actually born in Arizona that live there. Everybody's from somewhere else.
Sure.
And so it's always like, oh, you're not a native, and I come to Texas, and I'm like, most of us are not natives too, but yeah, I was like, I love it here. This is my,
I am
home,
native.
But yeah, well, good to know you.
Yeah, well, there's a few of us out there kicking around, and we're very proud of it.
Yeah, I'll bet. But yeah, came to Houston, working for that to sell out this LNG plant that was built there. And again, watching a company building a new plant, expanding it into a new market, serving new customer types and stuff.
But this business was an existing business. It wasn't in the startup phase.
No, it was not. No, it was not in the startup phase at all.
It was already existing.
Yeah,
and
very healthy. Had other
Right.
production facilities over in Arizona that served Arizona and California in LNG. And said, hey, we're going to get into the E&P market and displace diesel. For like dual fuel frac rigs and things like that. Which was a real healthy push for that. 2000 when diesel was $4 even for off road. You can get LNG cheaper at the time.
Sure.
And then the
I remember when diesel went to that, someone saying that'd be like going to the butcher and the bologna's more than the ribeye.
Yeah.
When you're buying diesel at that rate. I was like, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, that was short lived.
Yeah.
But the market focus there was all in E&P. And then as the market kind of corrected back to normal and consistent, it's like, this is not cheaper. Some are doing this blending, a lot are not. What other markets can we chase? And at that time, SpaceX has taken off, Blue Origin's taken off, and their initial booster fuel was LNG. And that booster, that the initial, I think it's the Falcon 5 for SpaceX, and then for Blue Origin, I don't remember the name of their engine that they were testing, but the initial lift fuel that they pulled off was about 150,000 gallons of LNG is what got them their first probably couple thousand feet of elevation, got everything moving, and then it switched over to like a hydrogen oxygen kind of blend. Yeah. So in that plant happened to build it with a system that put out very high purity LNG. So all of a sudden you've got the only plant within 800 miles that can supply this thing.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, you have a couple meetings and all of a sudden, boom, boom, the plant's nearly sold out.
So you're responsible for the success of Upright
Yeah, right.
and SpaceX. No. That's great, man. You're 2 for 2
yeah,
here.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm not going to claim any of those. I can't claim any of those.
Yeah, you know what? And I wonder, was that a case of just happened to be in the right place, right time, or was there some market research that went into deciding this is where the plant needs to be?
No.
And what the plant needs to be capable of doing.
Yeah, the plant was in a great location if, E&P kept taking LNG.
Gotcha.
It was in a good location to reach, just south of Dallas. You can reach all of that, East Texas. You can reach up in Oklahoma and some of the others that weren't served. There's no plant nearby. And then all of a sudden there's rocket testing going on in Monahans, Texas. Or not Monahans, or just east of El Paso, Van Horn, where Blue Origin did rocket testing, and then over just south of Waco, where SpaceX was the rocket testing. It just happened to be that way. Just kind of worked out. kind of crazy.
Sometimes it does.
And
Sometimes it's that way.
But then you get connected to that from a guy who I used to work with, the company in Salt Lake. Called him up, said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I'm working for Blue Origin now. What are you doing there?" "I'm buying all their fuel." Well then,
Yeah,
sparked
I
a
got a
meeting.
deal for you. Yeah, yeah.
We should know each other better, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of went from there.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm not, you know, and this, I'll tell you what, you know, this interview really, I think is should be part one of a part two, because you've talked to some entrepreneurs, you know, that I've listened to several of your podcasts. You talked to some entrepreneurs that have had, you know, a series of successes, or at least one like real good success. Me, I'm in my first real, you know, from founding to gathering funding to startup to operational. We're in like this stage now where we are, you know, standing up, getting high quality customers, and starting to book in our operations schedule, you know. And I think, you know, a year from now we'll be able to look back to what I'm looking forward to of, hey, we talked about this. Now let's talk about some more of the lessons and some more of the experiences learned over the last year.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, some of these guys you talk to, I'm like, I'm impressed. I love what they're saying.
Yeah, so several of the people that I've talked to, we've stayed connected, obviously, and I plan on circling back with them and saying, all right, now where are we with this stuff? And so definitely, I would love to do that as well with you guys. I mean, because you're right, there are a lot of lessons in that initial push, right? And you're standing it up and getting all of the things in place that it takes to run a business, and then look forward, you know, 5 years, 2 years, even a year, and you know, those timelines get pretty accelerated, especially in the beginning, and to look back and say, all right, where are we now would be a very interesting look, I think, and a lot of people would get a lot out of it. So yeah, we definitely can do that. And if you're pitching the hey, I'd like to provide more content for you, then it's sold. So yeah, done deal.
Well, I just like I said in the beginning, you know, I think people telling their story, you know, is invaluable, especially in our industry. You know, tell the story. People want to hear the story, because you look at, you know, what is the result, and you don't really get to hear about what it took to get that to the result.
Rarely.
With like, this is having gone through, like, I'd never gone through fundraising. I'd never gone through like operating agreements, all those things, and learning all that piece I went through on this was really the first time I've gone through it, and got to a point now we're on a trajectory that is very, very, very encouraging, you know, but we're 4 months into full operation.
Sure.
You know, so we're still figuring things out and putting processes in place and make sure we're staying on top of things and whatnot. But it made this massive appreciation for, you know, other companies. I drive down the freeway and I look at these commercial complexes, and they got like business names above the door and stuff, and I'm like, I'm impressed. It means something different than before. It means like this guy's gone through some things to have that company or maintain that company. You see that name, you know, whatever, you never heard of the business, you don't know what they do, but their logo's been on that door for 5, 6, 7 years, 10 years. You know, like you're doing something really well.
The glass is stained around that logo.
Yeah, it is, and that is proof of endurance. That is proof
they've done.
Of like,
they hit something and they stuck with it. No doubt they had trials. No doubt they had to figure things out on the fly, but they did it, and which means other people can too. Yeah. So it is encouraging in that way. So now you've got an LNG facility supplying rockets, and that's amazing. And so you're with that company for how long?
1 year.
Just 1 year?
Yeah, 1 year. They got the plant up and running, sold a few, and one of my customers was a terrible customer. I went and visited with them to try and make them a better customer. You know how that works? Yeah. Like, hey, you guys, they had equipment that they were using to supply natural gas during pipeline outages. So they would go in, and when they shut a line down for repair, replacement, testing, and all the meters along that line, you shut them off, curtail them. You know, they would come in, truck in, compressed natural gas, inject that into the system, so you don't have to relight homes. You can keep you know, small commercial industrial kind of running. And in order to do at a little bit, they had these small CNG trailers, and they had this old LNG vaporizer. You know, so I sold them a few loads for a job. And I went out to the job to see how things were going, went and met the guys and saw their equipment, you know, and I'm like, we'd designed and built equipment for on-road use for filling LNG trucks and stuff like that. And I have my name on a patent with some other folks. I'm putting some pump intake technology to get some complete fills there. And I looked at this equipment. I was like, man, we could do so much better.
Yeah.
You could be a way better customer, and you could serve your customer better if you would buy this other equipment. You would get a lot more jobs. And so I went to it was CenterPoint Energy on this company. So I called the guy. I was like, "Can I come visit you?" And I went into his office, and he's like, "Yeah." And I started telling him, I'm like, "You could be a much better customer to me if you would buy this equipment."
You're brokering a deal between these guys.
If you buy this equipment, then you could serve these other customers. That there's no one doing this at this scale. Small CNG, you're limited on flow, or you're limited on pressure with LNG. Like, let me introduce you to some people. And he was like, he had no idea. He didn't know how to approach that. He kind of been running that business for about 5-6 years, kind of just kept it as is. And it was really just kind of serving CenterPoint at the time, kind of keeping from having to relight your stove. They could shut down a line feeding your neighborhood, and you wouldn't even know it, because they'll just bring in a CNG trailer and just inject gas in there, turn it all back on. Nobody knows.
Right.
That way they don't have complaints. They don't have relights. So it limits cost quite a bit. Anyways, he's like, well, why don't you help us out? I'm like, okay, I'll introduce you. It's actually, Josh's brother, Tim Lowry is over at ACT. And Tim would tell you for years I was his best customer, never bought anything. I'll tell you that. Maybe we'll get to that story, but I said, let me introduce you to Tim. You want to build a piece of equipment that can do this? He's the guy.
Yeah.
Him and Jack, let's go do this. And he's like, well, why don't we just do better than that? Why don't you just come work for me? And I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And he's like, that means moving to Houston, we negotiate through some things, and the timing worked out. I was like, I like this. This is something that I think we can grow and do, and I get another opportunity to build some innovative pieces of equipment to serve a market that's like almost untouched. And I'm like, yeah, and they'll pay for this. Let's do it. So I joined that company. I ran that business for them for about 7 years and helped them sell it.
And so going back to what you said when you were a kid, you wanted to. You were into computers, but then you also like the idea of building, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you kind of follow the path here, everywhere you went, you're building something, whether physically building something or building the infrastructure in a business to take on emerging markets or whatever it was. So you're sort of scratching that itch, right? You're getting to be a part of that building process, and that stuff's always I love that part of things, building things. And I tell people, the difference for me when you're building things at a startup level versus an existing company level is the decisions at the startup level. You get to see those returns almost immediate, and you get to real fast whether that was a good move or a bad move, and so it's definitely more pressure, but also a lot more rewarding in some cases, I think.
Yeah.
So you're there. You said you worked for them for 7 years. Probably build that business up pretty well.
Yeah, we took it from a tiny little local operator in Texas.
Yeah. And
made it really a nationwide leader and built an entire market for off pipeline natural gas.
That's great.
Nobody was doing it. We went in and we built these high flow, high pressure mobile LNG vaporizers. Probably the first ones ever in the world. I'd never seen it done at this scale. That we were putting it out. Like pipelines operate at 1,000 psi,
mm-hmm.
and customers will take gas at 1,000. They may cut it they may regulate it down to 50, 100, 250, whatever it is that goes to their system, and they may take it at 20 an hour, all the way up to 500 an hour, and they may go back down to 20 an hour. They want that pipeline experience. And so it's, well, can we build a piece of equipment that can deliver this? And we could keep up with their flow. And we could truck
mm-hmm.
in the LNG, run it through a gas-fired indirect water bath vaporizer, glycol bath vaporizer, and maintain pressure with them with some type of pump system. So went in to ACT and finally became, I lost my title as the best customer, never bought anything. And, we spent a few $1 million on some equipment, invested in this company, and we took it from $4 million a year in revenue and built it to $22 million a year in revenue in a few years.
Yeah.
With a little bit of investment. And so CenterPoint was thrilled with that. But being able to design something that's exhilarating for me is, I guess you had identified, I never really thought of it that way, is build something new that can fill that niche,
mm-hmm.
gives the business a big competitive advantage, but also serves the customers we're trying to serve.
Sure.
More completely.
Well, you identified that when you were just brokering the deal. Like this is a need, and these aren't the only people out here with that need. Surely someone else is. Yeah. And hey, I want to help you out because you have this piece of equipment that can do this, and with some modification can do it at a larger scale. I think there's a market here, and so you're identifying some real gaps and then solutions to those gaps, which is amazing. And then you get connected with amazing people, and it just takes off. So it sounds great.
You know, it's funny you talk about finding those gaps. You know, you go into this market research, asking customers. I remember I went to this gas conference in Tennessee, and I'm like, man, I bet you there's a bunch of business out here because I really like Nashville. There needs to be business out here.
Cool.
Oh, Nashville's great. It's a little different than it was back then, but at that time I was like, man, I would love to open an office out here so I could come visit a little more often. Main Street's so much fun. Anyway, went to this gas conference and met a couple of guys there, the old school operators, been working for these utilities and transmission pipelines and stuff for 15, 20, 30 years, guys. You know, I said, hey, how often do you guys use LNG or CNG when you shut down a pipeline to feed your customers? Because like I've never even heard of that.
Oh, really? So were they just shutting it in and telling the customers you'll be back up in an hour?
Yeah, they try and time it with a commercial saying, hey, we got to do a shut-in, we got to do this repair. It's going to take us 4 days. You're going to be without gas. Can you time your total down or maintenance or things around that? We'll kind of work with you. And then cities, you know, they just relight you, shut you down for the day, try and get you up as fast as possible. So I'm talking to the guy, and his response, we never done that, was just like deflating. Because this is at the time we're designing this piece of equipment, and we're going to put $1 million into this thing. And I'm like, maybe we're going down the wrong road.
But he didn't say we wouldn't do that. He just said we haven't done that.
So that night, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, I asked if they've ever done it before. I'm like, why would he have ever done that before?
Right.
No one here is doing that. There's no one within 1,000 miles that's offering this. This is the first time we've come to this show, us offering to do it.
Yeah, ask the wrong question.
Like, what a horrible question. Yes, exactly that. I'm like, I asked the wrong question. What a horrible question. I couldn't believe it. Like, we're asking the wrong question. We need to ask, what do you do? What do those customers do? And their response is going to be, oh, they shut down. Would they want an option to not have to shut down?
What if they didn't have to?
Yeah. Would they be willing to pay for that? Well, what does that cost? Well, that could be $12 an M to $45 an M. Does that still make sense? Yeah. And then the responses were, oh, absolutely, we'd love to do that. We want to offer that because when you tell a customer you're going to shut them down, they're irate. And all of a sudden, everybody with an interruptible believes that they had an uninterruptible contract for transport, and they're just they're going nuts. Their CEO golfed once 10 years ago with the other CEO, and it's raining down.
This says no downtime.
Yes, exactly.
No, it doesn't.
So this poor project manager's getting rained down on this side. Customer marketing, everybody's coming at him.
Yeah,
you know.
sure.
And when I saw this, like, that's it. It's not, have you ever done this? It's, when are you going to do this?
How important, though, is it to identify the right question?
No, the question, in that moment, had I been maybe less experienced, less intuitive to realize that night, like, I asked the wrong question. You know, it would have been, hey, there's nothing here.
I wonder how many times in my career I've asked the wrong question or didn't follow through with another question. You know what I mean? So that's as critical, to ask a follow-up question. So going back to when you asked that guy what he did, and he invented leveler blinds, and the follow-up question to it, what made you want to invent that, right?
Yeah. And how'd you get to market? And how'd you get people to buy them? They buy curtains.
Right. That's right.
They want curtains.
That's right.
That's what everybody believes. Beautiful curtains. He's like, no, they don't.
No, they don't. Now they want wood shutters that are shockingly expensive to install.
Yeah, and push a button and go up and down and let the light
that's
in.
That's a different thing. At my house, we have the manual creaky ones, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But identifying the proper question to ask, because you're right. Had you had less experience, or had you been less intuitive, you might literally go back and say, hey, man, there's nothing here, that they don't do this.
Yeah. That would have been my feedback, like you were talking about, the guy comes trying to change direction of the company.
Right.
My feedback would have been
they don't do
ignorant.
That.
Would have been ignorant. But I was the guy who went to the show. I'm the guy who talked to the customer. I'm the guy that comes back and says, hey, there's nothing here. We asked
They're
them,
waiting for you to say.
They've never done it.
Yeah.
And so the next day, I was like, I got to find this guy. Never really got his name or anything. He's very recognizable, older guy, bigger guy. I'm like, I'm going to find him. And I found him. I went over to him and said, hey, yesterday I asked you this question. He said, never. And then I asked him the new question I come up with, to the effect of, would your customers appreciate if you offered them a solution to maintain their gas flow during shutdowns?
Of course.
Absolutely. And I'm like, who else would like that? Let me introduce you to so-and-so. Let me introduce you to so-and-so. Walk me around, introduce you to a couple people, ask them the same question. I'm like, there's a gold mine here. There's a gold mine here.
Yeah. So again, that follow-up question.
It's it.
You have anybody else I can talk to ask that same question
Yeah.
to? And you're off to the races at that point. So you identify now this is a thing.
Yeah.
And so now you've got a solution now that up till then had not been in play, or if it had been in play, not widely in play. And were you guys the only game in town with that, or were there other competing entities out there kind of figuring the same thing out in the same time you guys were?
Well, at that time we built those mobile LNG vaporizers. We were the only ones with them.
That's
but
handy.
it wasn't. It was a new design, but it was not a proprietary design. So we went in. Tim built these units for me. I thought I had that off. Tim built these units for me, and then we were marketing everywhere. We can do high pressure, high flow, and everyone's like, "How you doing high pressure, high flow?" Oh, with LNG, how you doing that? Well, we have a pump system to pump the liquid. Liquid then goes to the vaporizer, push
the whole
gas.
time.
Oh, yeah. And there was 3 competitors that immediately went over and they bought vaporizers, exact same ones. You know, we'd already been running them for almost 2 years by the time they took the delivery of theirs, and we realized this one has capabilities, and we're starting to book this thing out. Let's build 2.0. Here's a new idea, one that's easier to operate, more reliable, has other redundancies built in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's even better than our old design. And then took that with the success we'd found in version 1.0 that everyone now bought. We went in and we built 2.0. Went in and said, "Hey, Tim, Jack, help us build this thing." They're like, "Absolutely." They're building new stuff. Like, it's not in the catalog. They're like, "We don't have a catalog." You know,
Right.
You know, we built 2.0 and went to market with that. And again, it was kind of everybody chasing behind us, trying to figure out what it is. And in this market of critical demand services,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you're not doing it, it's very difficult to get the MSA and get a project and anything else. You can buy the equipment all day long.
Sure.
You know, but then if you're not operating consistently, your guys don't know how to operate it. They're a little more timid with it. You know, and so for us, we just kind of, first mover was a massive advantage. And that business still maintains that. And there are several other players in that market that have similar capabilities. But for some reason, that company gains most of those projects. They've just been very successful with it.
So how were you identifying what 2.0 looked like versus 1.0? Was it, you know, okay, here are the limitations of 1.0 that we really have identified. Let's make sure those limitations don't exist in 2.0, or was there, and that may obviously be part of it. And then the other part, was there some strategic, like, we need it to do this because of some market knowledge that we have?
Yeah, so there was 2 parts. One is, how easy is it to operate? What are my operators saying?
Right.
You know, do they see risks? They see failure points? Are we experiencing failure points at certain points? You know, that you just can't have. How can we have, you know, have some redundancy built into our system? And then 2 was market saying, well, if you can do, you know, these units could do 400 an hour. I think it's 750 pounds. He's like, well, can you do 1,000? I'm like, do you need me to do 1,000?
Probably.
Like, what are we talking about here? I'm like, yeah, we have this. We need to be able to do 800 pounds, 1,000 pounds, because sometimes we're pushing down a 6-inch line 5 miles, and if you're only putting 700 pounds in, we lose pressure down to the other end, or pressure drop. By the time we get to the regulator set, you're not going to push through. I'm like, yeah, it's one project, and what, 1,000? You know, that's not going to happen very often, right? And they're like, do you want to do it or not? You know, so we're busy enough with the ones, like, let's build 2.0.
Yeah. And so essentially you were looking for something that had a wider operating range in the same piece of equipment, rather than having to have a different piece of equipment to service a higher pressure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got you.
And so with that, we went to a totally different style of pump.
Sure.
You know, so what we had before was a reciprocating pump, like in a pot, which was very proven for LNG. And in the marine world, where they were just getting into LNG for marine engines,
mm-hmm.
right? They're LNG tanks, natural gas, and they need very high pressure injection. 6,000 pounds, 7,000 pounds.
Oh, wow.
They would inject the LNG, vaporize it immediately into the cylinder for these slow speed engines.
Mm-hmm.
And so a company called ACD was building these basically piston style compressors for liquid. for cryogenic liquids. And I remember in probably 2013, 2012, I went to their shop and they're doing a big demo on it. And if you're pumping nitrogen with it and it drips a little bit, you have a little leak, it's nitrogen. It's not flammable.
Right.
It's inert. Who really cares? And that's the way they've always operated. Well, they try to use the same thing, change some seals, this and that, and they're pumping LNG with it, and it's got a little bit of a leak.
We can't have some drips here. We gotta probably shore that up a little bit.
There was a steel plate. It's probably like 3/4 of an inch thick that was underneath this thing, and I don't think they put it was there to catch drips. It was just kind of part of the skid. And this thing was dripping on it so much that the steel plate cooled in the center faster than the outside and started to curl up.
Oh, wow.
And so now you got all these marine operators there saying, if that drips on my hull, what happens? Yeah, bad day.
Yeah, you have a bad day.
Extremely bad day, and so they went through a few other renditions and they built that pump that was reliable for like 10,000-15,000 hours of service and did not drip.
Yeah, well, you have to.
And that came out at almost the exact same time. We're like, we need 2.0. And if we have a positive displacement pump, we can control our flow a lot better to serve a wider breadth of customers, more accurately, easier, and with less risk. And so I met Peter Keller through Josh and Tim, who was in charge of all of Tote's LNG program for their boats that were running cargo to Puerto Rico. So I called up Peter. What are you guys doing? He said, we're using this thing. It's working great.
That's awesome.
I'm like, I'm going to use that pump. He goes, do it. He said, we've got 15,000 hours on these. No drips, no problems.
You just run like a champ.
So we put that pump in, and that thing, that piece of equipment just, it rules it. And then after we built that thing, other people saw it. It's a significant investment.
Sure.
To build that system, and it was luckily for us at a time when CenterPoint was investing in their competitive energy businesses. They wanted, let's generate cash with these competitive businesses, take that cash, invest it in the utility, because that cash cost us nothing.
Right.
There's no interest rate on that.
That's right. So this was almost a separate service line at CenterPoint.
Completely different.
To bring in outside revenue.
Bring in cash to invest in the utility at a zero cost.
Brilliant idea.
Brilliant idea. Well, you get a different CEO, you get a different idea. So, but at the time, that CEO was on it. And I said, hey, give me another, $1.5 million. I'll buy this system. I'll earn enough, op income on the thing in 18 months. I'll pay it off. And sure enough, we did. But then after that was built, again, it was a brand new design, in tank, booster pump, everything, and no one had ever done that before. And then after we built it and people saw how well it worked, you get companies like New Fortress. They're like, well, if it can do 500, can it do 1,000?
Yeah. And then the next question is,
and
can
then
it do 2,000?
Yeah. And so they built the same design that we took, we proved, we troubleshot, we made it work real well. And then that design is then scaled up and used all over, being used in Mexico and Ireland right now for those companies.
So obviously you guys are bringing, at that point you're bringing a new technology to market. And it's something that can be tricky for people to allow you to prove it.
Yeah.
Right. You can say, yeah, it works. How difficult was it to get the buy-in and on the almost permission is kind of maybe not the most proper word, but it's definitely one of the most accurate words. Permission to, yeah, sure, we'll let you. Yeah. We'll let you charge us for that, and hopefully it works.
Yeah,
how did you get there with that?
Yeah, so you imagine this: you're going to an extremely risk-averse company like a utility.
Yeah, right.
With the top like 5-6 utilities in the country, saying, "Hey," and I'm this tiny little competitive
idea.
Business over here. It's like, "Hey, I want to do this. This is what I think it'll do. It's never been built before. This is how we're going to do it. This is why I think it's going to be successful." And pointed out, Tote shipping their engines and
how many do you want?
They had. Yeah. Well, what's funny that's kind of what happened. I'm sitting there in front of, they have this executive committee with the CEO and the CFO and some other people, and you had to go through this process to get into this meeting to pitch to get approval for your capital. And that was a schooling in itself of going through that whole process and getting, and not just the analytics of it, the market intelligence you had to put together in a format, but then also you don't go into a meeting asking for a yes if you don't know you're already going to get the yes. So there's all that piece behind where like, well, I know these 6 people are going to be in the meeting. I know these 3. I'm going to go talk to them.
Sure.
And make sure I'm not wasting their time.
You're laying some groundwork.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did it under the guise of like, I don't want to waste your time. This is something I plan on bringing to the committee. It's actually on the plate for next month, I'm willing to pull it if you say no.
Right.
But this is what I'm doing. And they're like, and every single one was like, no, bring it. I'm like, all right, I appreciate your support. So when I got into the meeting, I was like, I got to kill it because I've got 3. And if 2 are loud, the 3 might flip on me. We went in there and pitched it, and new technology. It's not like we were buying something off the shelf. Oh, this thing's been running forever.
Right,
Which is, a very risk-averse company says, hey, show me, something like that's running right now. You're buying the exact same one. They know exactly how it works. I'm like, no, this is first ever.
Yeah. This is one of one.
You want to be first. You want to be never. And the CEO or the CFO at the time, Bill Rogers, looks at me and goes, well, why don't you buy 2? And I'm like, I don't have enough guys to run 2. He just looked at me like he didn't accept the answer. I'm like, okay. I know I can book out 1. And I can meet goal. We can get this thing paid for. And he's like, okay. And later I found out, he told me, he's like, I asked you why you didn't buy 2 because I was telling you, ask for 2.
Yeah, buy 2.
Yes, I was telling you to buy 2. I'm like,
right.
Well, I did not pick up on that direction because he could see the way things changing. We're not going to be investing. This is probably one of your last chances. You're going to come in and ask for new money to grow this business. And after that, every idea was we're not investing in the competitive energy businesses. We're starting to sell them.
Oh, wow.
And then just to pay down some of their debt from some of their purchases that they made. But, that was a lesson right there in itself. It's like CFO says, why aren't you? You said, you know what, you're right, I should.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's the answer.
How to read the room and, and understand kind of what's being, what the real intent behind what's happening is there. So, I think it's critical. One of the things to point out here is that always being receptive to the lesson, right? Even if something goes your way, there's always something to learn there, and take back and say, man, I got what I wanted there, but I also, man, I wonder what else I could have gotten out of that if I'd have just paid more attention, or if I'd have understood the intent behind what was being said there. And
one more question, where would that have led me?
Right, and good on that guy for catching you after the fact and saying, well, here's what I was really telling you.
It was 4 years later.
Yeah, well, he's a busy guy. He's a busy guy. And so at that point, when did you leave CenterPoint, and for what reason?
So CenterPoint said, hey, we're gonna sell. I was running Mobile Energy Solution, which was the LNG CNG company, and then also all of their intrastate pipelines, running that business for them too. And they said, hey, we're going to sell the Mobile Energy Group, and then we're going to roll in the intrastate pipeline group into the utility. We need you to help us sell the Mobile Energy Group. Who are the buyers? And so I said, okay, I guess I'm going with this deal. So I brought in a few buyers that would see the value in the company. Helped them sell it. They sold it in August of 21. Went with the new owners for about 6 months, and then parted ways with them about 6 months in, and said, well, I've always kind of had my eye on serving this industry in another way. It's like, I'm gonna explore this, see if this makes sense.
So this puts you to early 22.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're like, I'm gonna do my own thing.
Yeah. And the timing was I don't know. I think there was a lot of things that came in that removed some risk. CenterPoint treated me very well for building the company and helping them sell it and everything. So you had some runway there.
Sure.
Financially, to make some decisions. And said, hey, let's
you knew it would be okay for a period of time. If this takes
like
a while,
I got some runway here, and I got some some money to put in. Let's run down this road, and let's run hard and fast. Yeah. And one of the guys that built the mobile energy business with, Zach Shaban, said he parted ways with that company at the same time. He's like, I said, hey, let's go chase this thing, man.
Sure. And
so we dug in, created a business plan. 1.0 looked terrible looking back on it now. I don't know anybody talked to us, but created what we thought was a teaser, really our first time running through it, and went through the gauntlet, and got through that stage, and luckily, teamed up with some very, very good people that have been good mentors to us through this process.
That's
and
critical.
Very, very fair, folks, and just kind of learned all of that, what it takes to go raise capital and convince someone to give you money and convince someone that you know what you're doing and
Sure.
convince them that your money will be in as good a hands as possible here, you know?
Yeah, I mean, because it's not a small investment, I would imagine. So
No. I mean, to some it may seem small, but to most individuals, it's fairly significant, yeah.
it's a lot, yeah. So at this point, are you married? Do you have kids?
No.
Nothing going on? Yeah.
Yeah, so I get in that year from the time I says, hey, let's take off and do this. I had a son who went into the Marines during that time. I have a daughter who's in the Air Force Reserves and also in college.
Mm-hmm.
My oldest daughter is getting married. Tells me after, as I'm into this process, saying, hey, I'm getting married.
Right.
How much money can you give me?
That's right. I need some money. I'm getting married. Yeah.
And I got engaged and got married during this.
So all this is happening.
All this is happening in that same kind of in this
early 22.
Early in 2022.
Yeah.
I got married in December. She got married in August. My son, I've got another.
She got married in December of 21 or 22.
22.
Okay. So
we launched in October of 22. I got married in December.
But the idea for the company started
in May
timeframe.
Yeah. Late April, May, kind of like, hey,
so it started in April, May, and you launched in October.
Yeah.
It was pretty quick.
Yeah.
Pretty quick. Because, you had to go through all the business planning and funding and everything. Yeah,
like I said, if you looked at our kind of version 1.0 of our presentation and in our fantastic 4-tab spreadsheet that in the end turned out to be like 22 tabs and all kinds of analytics and stuff and a lot more market information and stuff, and they really convinced somebody.
How'd you convince your fiance you weren't crazy?
I don't know. I from when we first kind of got into like the sale of the company with CenterPoint and was telling her about that, and it was like, okay.
Had you guys been together for a while before this?
No, we've been together for 3 years now, and at that point we've been together for a year.
Yeah, and you said, hey, I got this idea.
We engaged it a year and a half.
We're getting married, and also,
I'm gonna start a company.
Guess what's gonna happen?
And I'm not gonna have any income for a while.
Yeah. Right. That's right. And my daughter needs this much money for a wedding.
And our wedding. Yeah, I'm gonna pay for this. I'm gonna do that.
And I asked that because it is critical in understanding that there's so much involved in starting a business and running a business and those types of things that if you don't have the support from home, it can be. You got to make a decision, one or the other.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine that you have that support, or you wouldn't be as successful as you are. And so, what was her response when you said, "Hey, this is what I'm going to do"? Did she ask questions, or she's like, "I got you. Go ahead, do what you can do"?
Yeah, she's like, "I believe in you.
That's awesome.
Do it." She's like, "Do it." I remember when we announced the company. After the funding and everything, when we went, and a little bit later when we made the announcement, I came home, from our little makeshift office at the time that was going to become like what our operations center is now. And they had like my daughter and my soon-to-be wife put together this big old thing in the kitchen, with all our colors are green, so these green balloons and all this stuff and all this like these little candies. It's kind of like being asked to prom with the candies. You put them in different. You're $100 grand, this and that. I won't snicker. And they kind of did that with this whole congratulations thing.
Oh man.
So yeah, it's like, well. On one sense, like, hey, I got support, and the other, it's like, better not fuck this up.
Yeah, man. I hope this is not misplaced support.
Because we're taking pictures of this and look back, like, look at what we did for you.
Yeah, Facebook's not going to forget either. It's going to be like, hey, a year ago, this happened to you. Like, you bastards, you got me again.
No, it was, and it's, it's kind of a constant toil of you've got to succeed. I've heard this saying is going around a little bit more than it should, but people saying like, I don't have people I rely on. I'm the person people rely on. I look around and I'm like, I've got some friends, and I think if things got to a point, they'd step in. But like, I have a lot of people that, just rely on me. I'm that side of it.
Yeah. I think that when you think through, there's a lot of things that motivate you throughout the day, or for me personally, there's a lot of things that motivate me, but just knowing the sheer number of people that rely on me, not only financially, but I feel a sense to like be successful and do the things that I'm doing because I'm representing my family, legacy family, my mom, my dad, my brother,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that overstreet name that's out there, you know, you feel like you need to, you know, I feel a sense of responsibility to that, as well as to, you know, my wife and my children and my, you know, grandchild now, and those types of things. And it's definitely probably the strongest driver, but I also have a lot internally that I'm driven just naturally. I just naturally have a drive to want to do things and be successful, and those types of things. And most of I'd say everyone I've interviewed for this has that same drive, and you know, listening to, you know, how you got to where we are now. Obviously you do too, you know, that drive to identify things, be successful, work hard, and just be someone that can be depended upon, and not doing it for that reason, but you know that that's something that whether it's expressed or implied, that's an expectation that's out there.
Yeah. You know, one of the things you really deal with, and you have to figure out how to deal with, is like stress.
Yeah, sure. What do you do?
Yeah. What do you do?
I do jiu-jitsu.
And that's how you would work with your stress.
Yeah, I go get beat up people for 4 times a day or so. Have for a little over 9.5 years now.
I did. Here's my experience with jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
A couple of my kids were doing it, and well, my ex-wife. They're like, "Hey, we were married at the time. Just come to this studio thing and try this out." I'm like, "Okay." You know.
Did she do it?
My ex-wife, I don't know if she does it anymore.
Okay, but she did.
But at the time,
then.
she was. Yeah, she was. She was kind of starting into it and stuff, and a couple of my boys were doing it. And I said, "Yeah, I'll go." And at the time, you know, I was on this major health kick, and I was a lot stronger than I am now. And I was like, you know, I was in really great shape. Anyway, and so I say, I'll wrestle this guy. So, but I told him, I said, "Look, I'm 215, 215 time not now. But as I'm 215, and he looked like he was like maybe 190, 200. He's like, yeah, I'm 205. Like, all right, dude, then you got some strength, and we're pretty close. So like, don't go easy on me. I want to know exactly where my skill level is. I'm like, embarrass me. Make me tap out, choke me out. I'm thinking, I'll tap out. I don't want to get hurt. You know, I want to be able to go to the gym tomorrow. You know, I'm not about injuries. You know, but I want to just kind of level set me. And we went, and I ended up, I have some wrestling from high school and stuff. You know, so kind of going through those. And he's like, all right, there's no striking. This is jiu-jitsu. A couple of the rules. I'm like, okay. You know, and I got to where I basically got to where I could choke him out in a matter of, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds. I think had I gone longer than that, he probably would have beat me, you know, but I got to where I'd choke him out. But he had rolled me hard, and he gave me this major cauliflower ear, and I ended up putting a needle in here, keep pulling the liquid out, trying to cure it. It's still like this, but this is my one street cred I got here. But
I have a little bit. I told people I have a professional amount.
Yeah,
so I can still have a career, but I don't look like it's a tortellini on the side of my head.
Yeah. People see it and they know, like, okay, this guy fights.
I think it does something. Yeah.
Anyway, so it was like 20 seconds. I'm like, okay, jiu-jitsu's for pansies. I'm out. And then I watched like Joe Rogan and stuff, and I'm like, I was not in the right studio.
Yeah, you should try it again.
That was my experience, and I walked away. I was like, I was dead wrong.
So my experience, my youngest daughter was probably 7 or 8 years old at the time, and she saw Ronda Rousey fight, and she goes, I want to do that.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, cool, do it.
Absolutely, big yes.
And I wasn't training at the time. I was kind of doughy. I was going about 210, 215, and at the time I felt pretty good about myself. I look back at those pictures now, and I'm like, who's that dude? And what is that guy doing? Why is that guy such a loser? And so my daughter, we were living in Fort Worth at the time, in a town called Keller, so north of Fort Worth, a little suburb up there, Keller, South Lake area. And she finds a school. She goes. She starts training. She's really good at it. And then she starts competing. So one of her competitions, she got stuck on bottom and couldn't get up and lost. So we go to, she's like 8 or 9 at the time. Then we go to eat lunch, and I'm like, you've got to try to get up from there. You can't stay on the bottom, whatever, right? I'm not training at this time. I've not trained at all at this point. I'm 38. And so she says, well, Dad, I'm not trying to be rude, but you don't do this. So you don't know how hard that is. And I was like, you know what? That's fair.
Fair.
You're right. I don't. I said, so Monday in class, I'll stay, and I'll do the adult class. She goes, okay. And I had like I said, about 215. I felt pretty good about myself. I'd been in some scraps here and there. I'd won, lost, whatever. Definitely didn't feel like I was a pussy or anything, but I just, overconfident for sure. I had a 150-pound dude that had only been trained about 6 months hold me down. I couldn't move. I got claustrophobic. I felt like, oh my God, this cannot happen in the real world.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't do anything, and I thought, I've got to figure that out. And that was almost 10 years ago now. So I just back in May of this year, I got my brown belt. So next stop's black belt. The plan is to be black belt by 50. But you definitely didn't hit the right school.
I did not. And the problem with jiu-jitsu today is there are guys you look at and think they can't fight that would absolutely tear you up because of those skill sets. I can't remember where it was. I think it was in Fort Worth. There's like a downtown spot that has like a big open deal. They put a Christmas tree up every year. Fort Worth, I'm talking about.
Is it Sundance Square?
Sundance Square.
Yeah.
In Sundance Square, and there's a restaurant there called the Bluebird, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Walking by that restaurant, and there was this kind of chubby looking guy, and somebody was saying some things to him, and the guy that was, talking shit looked like he could handle himself, and the guy that was getting yelled at and didn't. I was like, this is gonna go bad real fast. This is not good. Trying I don't really want to be involved, but this guy's gonna get his ass whooped.
I'm just gonna monitor it. Yeah.
This guy that I thought, he's going to kick his ass, walked over. This big dude did some kick that happened so fast, hit that guy in the side of the head. He was laying down.
Yeah.
I'm like, sleeper. I would have thought, I'm like, never pick a fight with anybody. That was right then. I'm like,
Joe Rogan has a whole thing about it where he talks about it. He's always amazed at watching people talk shit that end up not knowing how to fight, and you don't know anything at all about the person you're saying that to.
Yeah. That's the problem with that's probably where I got that from. Joe Rogan pointed that out to him, that's the problem with it. And people can learn that don't look like they can fight.
What's been the most interesting thing for me in jiu-jitsu, and we'll get back to your because you get me off on jiu-jitsu, and then we'll end up
we'll be there for an hour.
It will be
we'll get back to how you deal with stress here in a second,
because it'll go for a long time. But anyhow, what's been one of the most interesting kind of things I've witnessed throughout the last almost 10 years now is how many times we'll have law enforcement show up to train and just get murdered by somebody that looks like me, like just an average dude, and never show back up. And it's so unfortunate because I can't think of another career path that definitely needs that.
Yeah, you cannot get choked out.
But we have a handful of sheriff's deputies and some troopers and stuff that train with us regularly, and a lot of times we'll do things like, since we're upper belts now, we'll say, okay, arrest me, and just see if they can. And a lot of times they can't. Or in the middle of a roll, I'll reach up and grab their hip and say, have your gun now. And just so they're mindful of the fact they need to keep that hip away from me, or, whatever. So it's absolutely beneficial. But so what got us down this path was, I asked what you did to de-stress, and you asked what I did, which is jiu-jitsu. And, like I said, I train, 4 days a week or whatever. And, but you deflected. So what do you do?
I don't know if I deflected. I was just really interested.
Yeah.
And it's something that I want to know from different people what they do to deal with that, because some people they don't have an answer.
Yeah, and I don't know what those people do, because
I don't either.
If I didn't do,
they try to avoid it, which makes it worse.
You can't avoid it, first of all. But if I didn't have that, I don't. I would. I don't know. I'd probably have given up the ghost years ago.
Yeah. Well, for me, I read this book about 7-8 years ago, The Untethered Soul. Eckhart Tolle. You ever read it?
I haven't.
Highly recommend it. Life-changing for me. I've given it to a few people that maybe weren't in the same state of mind I was at the time and didn't really appreciate it. But for me, it really kind of talks about and educates you, and learn from what I learned from it was how to really identify what the stress is, what that emotion is, what is going on inside your mind, what your mind really is. It's an organ that kind of helps you operate and cooperate. It's not like this person you have a discussion with, an argument with. And as I went through and I kind of learned those things, it really, rewired the way I think, rewired the way I see or feel emotion, rewired the way, and it made me pretty insensitive to a lot of things. I think it's a downside, which I have to be very cognizant of, especially my family, or other people. But at the same time, it made me, when I feel that stress or that emotion, it is a feeling. And identify the only thing that stress cannot beat its time unless I keep feeding it.
Right.
And I renew its clock every single time. So you just observe it and see what's going on. And for me, and maybe I'm, You talked about, entrepreneurs sometimes are maybe just a little bit delusional. Like, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no point in ruining now with something I'll figure it out tomorrow. Because clearly I'm not figuring it out right now. Let's relax. Let's watch a little TV, have a couple beers.
Sure.
Let's think about something else. Shut the mind off. And shut the mind off by just not participating. Just
I'm not going to participate in this thought process.
Yeah,
right
exactly.
now.
It's like there's one of me.
Yeah.
How can there be two things like, oh, I should do this? All right. And kind of let the mind stop. And that is a skill that I had to like learn and develop, of how to stop thinking and just let your mind rest.
Is that something that doesn't come naturally? I
No.
assume. So how did you cultivate that skill set? What did you do specifically to say, you read this book, it gave you the idea, okay, I can choose or choose not to participate in this feeling or this emotion at this time.
Yeah.
What did you do to sort of uncouple from that, and how did you ultimately, cultivate that skill?
I think I do the same thing every time, is in order to kind of not participate in that emotion that's coming up inside of you, or those thoughts that are kind of raging of, hey, you got to figure this out, is to then, the only thing you can really do is then focus your intention on like feeling where you are. So
just
when
being present.
Be present, and be present like in like, and this may sound like spaceship weird stuff, and it was weird to me at first too, but like just being present like in your body sitting there. When was the last time you intentionally said, I'm going to feel my pinky toe right now?
Well, I don't have to. Jiu-jitsu helps me feel every joint in my body.
Yeah, it comes to you, but like you're sitting there, and it's like you just because we're sitting here, you don't feel your pinky toe. But if right now you say, I want to feel my pinky, you feel it.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So to go through and say, I'm gonna kind of go through. And when I was in high school playing football, we had this one coach I thought was nuts, and now I realize he's brilliant. He would have everybody lay down on the floor in the locker room because it's nice and clean.
Yeah, always
before a game, and he would turn on this music, and he would go through this meditation thing of, think, feel your toes, feel your foot, feel your heel, and kind of work all the way. And if you really participated and do it, which most of us didn't, like, oh, this is stupid. I want to listen to AC/DC and hype me up and go out there and hit people. And had we really understood what he was doing, this was a life skill that I should have had since I was like a junior in high school playing varsity football. But I didn't take it right. I didn't learn it right. But at this point in my life, I'm like 38, and I said, I'm going to learn this. And I learned how to do it. And even with like the most, what seems like could be, this is a dire situation, or things don't go your way, especially when you're starting up a company, trying to get contracts, trying to win business. You're the new guy, you're this, and that there's a lot of opportunity for
to practice that skill.
Skill. That did not go the way I wanted it to. This did not happen the way I saw it. This or that. Just a lot of things that just kind of are all happening at the same time. You're trying to like turn into normalcy. There's a lot of opportunity for it, and just kind of meditating in it, and just realizing that I'm gonna figure it out. And you create a plan, like this. Here's my plan to figure it out. Tomorrow I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna work on this piece, and then it just kind of goes away that way. Pre-COVID, I was in when I had a regular, corporate job, I was in the gym every morning from 5 to 6:30, 6 days a week, and I was in much better shape than I am now. And then COVID hit, and everything hit with selling the company, starting the company, everything else. Just a lot of things have turned my attention to different things. But even then, physical was really didn't really work for me. Just kind of sitting there and just being still and like letting it go, and learning how to like let that brain stop. And the most creative things I've ever come up with, I think, for me, have been after that point, when I've just kind of let it go, and my brain's kind of got this, all right, the synapses all just kind of relax, and then come back and like, all right, I need to start thinking about this, and then this new creative that comes in from new flow of energy going through my mind then creates a different way of looking at something. It's like, we should do it this way. We should try this. And I was like, I'm gonna go try it. Let's figure it out.
That's an invaluable skill, honestly, to be able to say, this problem can't be solved right now. Let me take a step back from it. It
doesn't mean I can't solve it.
Right. It just can't. Right now, I'm not in the headspace to do it.
I'm not in the headspace to do it.
Yeah.
But that skill, like that's something like when I learned that, like immediately I wanted all my kids to be masters of this.
For sure.
Because like
I don't think everyone can master that, honestly. I think you can get to a level of maybe proficiency at it, but to be able to truly turn your brain off, like I don't think, and this is not a shot at her, but I don't think my wife could do that. Her brain, we'll go get massage, we'll go get a couple massage or whatever, and she's like, "How was your massage?" It was great. And she was like, "I don't know how you fall asleep in them." I was like, "Because I'm completely done. I'm not thinking of anything except what's happening right there."
You're feeling your body.
I'm like, okay. Now I will get hung up like when she only rubbed the right foot 6 times, but she rubbed the left one too. You know, that kind of thing. I'll start counting those things, but that's just my own sort of OCD maybe. But my I'm paying you to be even-handed on both sides. But she'll say I just couldn't shut my brain off, and I'm like, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
Because you've got to be able to do that at some point. So I think you can get to a point where you can enjoy yourself, and but I don't think everyone rather can get to a point of being able to just completely disassociate and break away from that stress pattern, unfortunately. But maybe you can. Maybe the book will help.
I think whether it's that book or any other book, it's I think a skill that people should learn from a very young age to kind of how to deal with stress, because I don't believe that some of these conditions that we have today, like depression and stuff like that, is like should be treated clinically. I think it needs to be treated educationally.
I don't think your primary response should be a medical intervention.
There's a skill you can learn.
Sure.
That will take you that will take you through your life, and you'll be able to enjoy and you'll understand, like, even when I feel stress, it's not because I feel like it's related to failure, despair, or something else. It's related to opportunity that I'm rolling through.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not feeling stress or feeling worried about something or can't figure something out, I'm not moving.
Right, you're not growing.
I'm not growing.
Yeah,
I'm not solving things. I'm not, and especially at this stage in the business, we're doing nothing but. It better be nothing but improvement every single day, as small as it may be. But it's almost like a privilege.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Because if you have no stress, you probably have no opportunity.
Right.
And that's your stress of.
You want real stress? Have no opportunities in a business. Yeah, for sure. So, but I do agree, and there was it might have been Confucius. I don't know who it was, but there's a philosophy that I read a long time ago. I was in high school actually when I read it, and it said, if it can be fixed, it's not worth worrying about, and if it can't be fixed, it's not worth worrying about. Because if you can't fix it, doesn't matter worrying about how to fix it. Yeah. And if you can fix it, worrying it doesn't matter because it's going to get fixed.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of think that way. Again, it's I don't get it right all of the time, but it does help. But for me, doing jiu-jitsu, whenever for that 2.5 hour period of time, the only thing on my mind is keeping that person from choking me unconscious or breaking my arm or whatever, and then trying to impose my will against that person. So, but there are a lot of studies too that show that regular exercise and those types of things help you mentally, not necessarily de-stress specifically, but help you mentally throughout your entire life. So
yeah, absolutely.
So here you are in the beginning phases of the business. You stand it up in October of 22, and before that, I'm sure you had to go through like some fundraising. Did you go on like a road show, those types of things?
Yeah, we met with a handful of folks from venture capital to banks to family funds, things like that.
Mm-hmm. And so you get the funding in place. You stand it up in October, and so what does your company do? Is it similar to what you were doing with CenterPoint? Is it a similar type of application? Because I know you have equipment, but help me understand a little bit of what Clean Recompression does.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So what we do is we help those same pipeline operators eliminate venting and flaring.
So like fugitive emission stuff, or
it's more like a planned outage. So they come in like the other business, when they would shut down that line to do repair replacement. You bring in LNG to maintain feed to those meter stations that are there, to those communities or businesses. In this case, that once they close the valves on each end or put a stopple in and they have this isolated section, there's gas trapped in there. And so the only way to safely work on it is to remove the gas.
Purge the gas. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You got to get it out. You know, you can't just, if there's 800 pounds in there, you can't start cutting on it. Right. You got to get it all out. You can. It's not going to turn out good.
It's not going to go well, but you can.
So what they've done, you know, historically is it just open a valve there, vent it out to make it safe, or flare it, burn it off. You know, so imagine if the only way to work on your truck is to burn everything inside of it, then you can work on the truck, and then you can put your belongings back inside. Or like a semi-trailer, the cargo, the only way to work on the trailer is to burn all the TVs inside instead of going to the dock, unload them, work on it, and then put them back in.
Put them back on, yeah.
You know, or put them in another trailer, right? So what we do is we've invented these, again, only ones in the world I've ever seen. These hypermobile natural gas compressors will come into that isolated section, will evacuate the gas out of that section and pump it into the active section of pipe. So we're literally moving it to the other side of the valve.
Just bypassing it.
In a sense, yeah. But a bypass is typically you'd run from the active section, run a pipe across where the isolated section back into the active, so you can keep the flow going.
Right. You're
but you still
you're
got
just
that
doing
trapped
it
gas.
long enough to evacuate
just
the
evacuate that volume.
Yeah.
And that volume could be 350 feet of 30-inch. It could be 30 miles of 42-inch.
Sure.
So it just depends on how big that section is, where they're doing that repair or that replacement. And the real trick for us, you know, again, I watched this regulation changing with methane emissions, especially planned outages. You have a lot of these satellites, these Google Earth or satellites, and you also have the Google Maps cars that have methane detection on them. You have other people you can buy these methane detection and go in the back of your truck, and they drive around the Permian, you know, taking data. And
you can buy cameras now that go on drones.
Yep, and you can fly them around. They'll collect all kinds of data, and the satellites go over and they see a release, you know, on a publicly traded company's pipeline, and they can calculate with some level of accuracy how much gas that was. And then they go down, they report it, and it becomes public. And they're like, no, we did that on purpose. And everyone's like, wait, what?
Right.
You did it on purpose? That wasn't an accident? You didn't have like a failure? It wasn't a pressure relief device going off or something else for safety? No, we didn't let the gas out so we could work on the line. Is there something else you can do? Well, you can flare it, again, burn all your product. Or you can run in there. So we look at this market and the way regulation was going with the methane tax and other things. We're like, man, there's got to be a better solution. There's some guys out there doing it with big semi-trailers. They're a little bit louder, consume a little more gas. They take up more space to kind of get them in and out. Like, can we do this with pulling them with, dually pickup trucks? How big a compressor could we build that we could safely pull with a pickup truck?
Right.
You know. And so we went in and looked at what's been done, you know, and said, there's just a lot of improvement. Can we make it quieter so you can get into, because a lot of these new pipelines in high consequence areas are around population.
Sure.
You know, and so then operating 24 hours, you can't have this big machine going all night without some sound attenuation. You've probably seen like in parts where they're doing, you know, exploration near populated areas. They try to put sound blocking.
Living up in Fort Worth, the whole Barnett Shale area, you're
in the neighborhoods, man.
Lots of sound walls and things like that.
Sound walls 20, 30 feet high.
Absolutely.
That. So I'm like, can we do it quieter?
So attractive looking too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Real scenic.
And they're right off the highway, the freeway too.
Yeah, real scenic area.
Yeah. You better get in and get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, what can we do? Can we, and then the cost, like one of the biggest costs that I had moving LNG and CNG equipment around was heavy duty trucking. And because I get power only units, so just bring your truck. You don't got to bring the trailer. It should be cheaper. No, it's more expensive because I'm going to bring my truck. I'm going to haul your equipment to this point, and then as soon as I unhook from you, I'm useless because I don't have a trailer. Yeah. I'm deadheading somewhere to get a trailer, and you're going to pay for that too.
Oh wow!
So now your actual miles gone out, your mob demob cost. It was a significant cost to that business. One of the biggest costs per project. I'm like, how can we get rid of that? Like, well, my operator. A guy that operates this, they're willing to drive like a dually pulling a trailer. Most of them don't want to drive a semi-truck pulling a big semi-trailer.
Yeah, most of them are going to be licensed too as well.
Yeah,
so that's a whole different consideration.
So we went in, we designed this compressor that you could pull. So how heavy can we get that we can safely pull, you know, behind these trucks. And we ended up designing this compressor that's an electric drive, so it's zero emissions in place. There's no internal combustion engine on it, and we drive it with a natural gas generator, which consumes less natural gas to supply the same amount of power that you need to compress that gas. Like, well, then we got to do it at rates that are fast enough that the customer might say, well, you don't have 5 days to pull this line down. I can't sit here and wait around. If I vented it off, I'd be done in a few hours. If I flared it, I might be done in a day. You know, so that's what you're competing with time-wise. So we had to do it faster. They had to have some flow on them. So we then went back to the drawing board, looked at what we could do to get the maximum flow out of it, and at least be as fast as, the fastest guy in the market, which was really one guy in the market at the time. And that was kind of our benchmark. And so we built these units completely. All of our specs and all of our hopes and dreams were built on nameplate and designs and models, and then when we get them, we're like, all right, well, we got to commission them, and then let's see how this compares to our calculation or to the engineering calculations on it. And for us, we got really, we were very fortunate, got really lucky, I think, because our weights were slightly under what we wanted them to be. So that made for the mobility. Yes. So then the driver experience, everything else is fantastic. Well within the capabilities of these trucks. The generators are a lot quieter than an engine that's sitting out in the open on top of a trailer, direct driving, a compressor. And then our flows were actually a little bit better than we thought they would be, actual performance. And then our ability to pull lines down to a lower suction pressure was actually a lot better than we'd expected to be. So we went from saying, hey, we're doing transmission pipelines, big lines only, to we did a small line for one of our premium customers, pulled it down in a matter of minutes when the other guy would come in and take 8-10 hours. And they were like, how'd you do in the same footprint? And they were just beside themselves. Like, this is amazing. And we thought, wow, we're not just doing transmission lines. We can do distribution lines. We can do main lines. That opens us up from, 200,000 miles of pipe that has to be maintained to almost 1.5 million miles of pipe with main lines and everything else behind distribution. And from that point, it's just kind of, those were all the good things that were happening as we're kind of coming up, putting in process, getting our MSAs with all these contractors. But again, it's, you build something that's never been built before. We could have bought something off the shelf that the packager says, hey, I've built 10 of these. I know exactly how they work.
Right.
It's like, but exactly how they work is not what my customer needs.
You also know what the limitations of those are.
That's the problem. I was like, but I think we can get better with this. Maybe. You got to make sure, a lot of studies with vibration, pulsation, a lot of those things have to go into it. Dynamic analysis going in the road and all those things, so.
Are you able to use the gas off the pipeline to power your generator?
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes a small stream of gas to power the generator. The generator's and then the generator itself, we're looking at like to future-proof ourselves, clean recompression. Like recompression's one piece to clean.
You gotta be real careful when you put the word clean in your title.
You do. It's like, what can we do to be as clean as possible? Let's future-proof ourselves from regulation or environmental or things like that, and having to permit for internal combustion engines, whether they're stationary or mobile.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with our design on our compressor, like we're electric drive, we're pretty future-proof there until they hit electric motors. Hopefully that's never. And then over here with the generator, we had to build something that had a lot of ignition and blending controls on it, so that we don't have the issues like they had with the original dual fuel frac, where we had methane slip and things like that. We had to get a real complete burn within our system, and fortunately we were able to do that, and we're proving that out through some other studies too. But you go in with, I think it'll work.
Yeah,
and
right. That's right.
It works. Wait, it works a little better than we thought.
It works better than we thought.
Yeah.
Turns out our math sucks, but in a good way. Yeah.
In a good way. Yeah.
So when you go to market, this is not a technology that existed, right? This is something that something existed in some form.
In some form, yeah.
So you're not having to go to market and say this is a new thing that's never been invented. So the barrier to entry is probably a little lower. You're saying ours is going to do it better. Yeah. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. So the guy that we had to go to, and I said, hey, how often do you guys use LNG or CNG to bag up stuff? Because that market was just not developed. People just weren't using it. We're the first ones to do a project like that for like Enbridge or something.
Sure.
And a whole bunch of people came and saw what was going on. They were just impressed how simple it was. This, it's been done. All the operators are used to it. They know it. It's not exotic. So that was like, at least that barrier's gone.
Yeah,
we just got to come in and compete on time and price.
Barrier though.
Oh, it's massive.
It's a huge barrier to do something that's not proven and let someone give you that test run. We see that in oil and gas. Wildcat, the company I work for, we have some proprietary tools, and getting someone to allow you to test run one in a well bore is it's a tricky dance for sure. So when you were designing this equipment, when you were going out for your funding, had you already designed the equipment out and had, this is kind of what it's going to do, or was it how far along the process when you went for funding were you in terms of how the equipment was going to function like it does today?
The design was extremely primitive. It was an idea.
Yeah.
It was more an idea on a notepad that I'd drawn out.
I was really hoping you'd say napkin.
Yeah, well, we went past napkin to a notepad, and I was trying to draw it all to scale. I had a little scale ruler for my construction days, and looking up the weights on these coolers and compressors and electric motors and scrubbers and controls and all this stuff. And what does a trailer that size normally weigh? And what's my pedestal, my frame, and my chassis? What's all that going to be? And the axles and all this stuff, and trying to calculate my weights and everything.
It's an extremely technical idea.
Oh yeah, well, I've taken that thing and after we ran several projects and it was successful, then I put it on a piece of canvas and I have it hanging on. I scanned it, put it on the wall, but I didn't want to do it. And I'm like, well, this thing don't work. That's
right.
Burn the paper, burn this.
Right, but the point is, when you go out and you're looking for your funding round, it's an idea. It's a fleshed out idea, and it's very technical in nature, but at the same time, it's just an idea.
It was.
But those the people that fund those types of projects are used to just ideas, and a lot of times, in my experience, a lot of times they're looking at the management team. How's this team going to perform? Is that your experience as well?
Absolutely.
They're looking at who's going to be running this thing.
I think there's certain people could walk in, I think somebody like Elon Musk could walk in almost anywhere and give some just ridiculous idea, and somebody's going to give him money for it.
Well, of course. Yeah.
Just because of who he is and what he's done.
Sure.
So I'm not Elon Musk, nowhere close to that. The guy's amazing.
You heard it here.
You heard it here.
You are Elon Musk.
Nowhere close to that.
You built
Mars.
SpaceX.
It's like he's on Mars. I'm here.
Yeah.
No, so no, but no, you have to have. It is the team. It is the team. Those and for us, we had some the folks that we closed the deal with. We had some at least some notoriety. Like they knew about us, what we built for CenterPoint. How that business had operated. They had some inside intelligence on that. So, well, that at least gave us some street cred when you walk in.
Sure.
Because places we walked into that had never heard my name. Those meetings went really fast.
Yeah,
and the follow-ups were zero, so it didn't take up any of my time.
Thanks for showing up. Yeah, that's right.
This is interesting, and I'm sure they looked at it and said, "Wow, this looks really, like a legit business plan." But who are these guys?
Man, I wish somebody I knew had this idea.
Yeah, that's it. And had someone they known, trusted, they'd done deal with before, and was successful, and they came to another deal, and they're like, "Dude, this sounds legit. I know you can do it. Rock and roll." So yeah, if you having people that you have at least some reputation,
sure,
that's walking in, or some history. Like I've never done a startup before on my own like this, and for them to say, and I'm still looking at them saying, yeah, they believe I can do it. Like I've never done from zero to this. I've come in at some points, built up. I've done this and built up. I've taken something that's small, made it bigger, opened up markets, and done things like that in expansion. But that was a bit, flattering, but also a bit daunting. It's like, well, they think I can do it. Let's go and do this.
Yeah. I've had other people describe like when they got their funding round, whatever that number was, right? They're always like, I can't believe they gave me that much money. That's weird. Someone would actually say, here, I trust you to do this.
Yeah. So I told my mom, and my mom's like, I don't know how you sleep at night. I'm like, it's not my money, Mom.
Yeah, hey, man. This all goes away tomorrow.
I'm joking. The Taubers are great people. We're going to take care of it. Yeah, I'm
sure.
Yeah, so Tauber Oil is the one that came in and said, hey, we believe in you guys. Great group of people. If you don't know them, you should.
That's great.
Very good family. Great. They have great businesses, great lines, and just very, very strategic and very smart. Very smart people and just fair, which is to these days is rare.
Fair is so important.
Yeah.
Because many times you can get taken advantage of because you're so eager to get your idea to market that you hear about these bands that sign the first contract ever put in front of them and they don't make any money ever. Yeah. And you're like, how is it that band that's so amazing didn't make any money? Well, they were so eager to just get the contract. So being fair is super important. So you stand the business up in October. First deployment is when after that?
June. First project, June.
Did you expect it to take that long?
Built equipment, put it into play.
So in October you hadn't had any equipment built.
We'd put quite a bit of money in deposits in order to get engineering and major
Got it.
components ordered.
Kind of get it spec'd out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we had things rolling at that point.
So then you sort of anticipated it would take a bit of time to spin up.
Yeah.
When you looked
the
at
equipment took longer than expected.
Sure, always.
Yeah.
But when you looked at it in October and you put your plan together, was June about the target of when you're going to?
No, it's March.
It was March. Was it
my Excel spreadsheet said March we'd be generating this much revenue. April,
and everyone knows that if it's on Excel, it has to happen.
Yeah, I hit save. Okay.
I also had auto save.
Yeah.
I have plenty of backups. But was it equipment availability that delayed it, or was it market conditions, or what elongated that cycle?
No, it was just the final build out and then the commissioning of the equipment.
Gotcha.
Because it's just the application, the way we're using it was just so new, even to a packager that's built thousands of compressor systems all over the world, one of the biggest in the world. For them is like this is a little bit new in some of these respects. So we need to make sure we do some extra double checks that you're gonna have a good long lasting piece of equipment. So the commissioning took a little bit longer than we'd expected. Plus the build took a little bit longer than expected, just because of some of the nuances of how we put everything all onto this one integrated trailer that we designed and patented. So that it just took a little bit more time than was expected, which is frustrating because you've got a business plan, you have an outlay, things that you've promised that you can deliver on, and you have to be able to explain how you're going to make this up, how things are going to how you're going to get past this point to the next stage, get past commissioning to operating projects to getting, and then getting MSAs with customers. Nobody's going to start a contract process with you if you can't win a job. You can't win a job or bid on a job if you don't have equipment.
Right.
At a minimum.
Right.
So it was that each of these things, one had to happen in order for the next to happen. Well, I want this one to happen. Well, there's two more, and these customers that called us, that contacted us after our announcement, had quite a few that we served with the other company, and said, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing. Where are you at? And, we're just blatantly honest. Hey, we'll have equipment starting in March. Call me back then. No. Let's get the MSA started. It takes a little while.
Sure.
Call me back then.
Yeah. Call me back in March when you have
call me back, and then that was delayed a little bit, but we've I think the hurdle of acquiring customers is a little bit lower just because we've known people for a long time. So when they saw the announcement and they reached out, it helped quite a bit. I think if we were I don't know how anybody can go into a brand new market they've never even participated in and all of a sudden and be successful in any reasonable amount of time, even if you have a great product.
Yeah, so I always find it interesting when companies enter that startup phase and they're going through the funding round and they're trying to find funding. They're going through that process, and especially in one that's as equipment intensive as yours is. You can't go out and get work without equipment, like you were saying, and you go in with this technical idea, and then you get funding, and then now that you have funding, you start going to customers and saying, hey, we're building this equipment out. Can we get some work lined up? And they say, you got to have an MSA. We're not going to do the MSA until you have equipment that you can show us that I can put my hands on. And again, like we talked about, my risk aversion, I would be sitting there going, man, I'm just burning through cash right now, and I don't have anything to show for it or anything on the books to even kind of mitigate this process. What did that look like for you guys at that time?
It's kind of if it's part of the plan and you expected that, it's you're right.
You just stick to plan.
Yeah, you stick to the plan. When things, if equipment gets delayed or build gets delayed or commissioning took a little longer than you expected, or then it's all right. We need to adjust the plan. We need to adjust what we expected for, whether it's mainly in spend. Delay hiring a little bit, delay this a little bit, delay that a little bit. But then you can't perform the projects if you don't have trained and qualified people. You can't, again, kind of what's the piece that has to be in place in order for everything else to work. You just got to kind of keep all the pieces moving, coming together. And if they come together at a real swift point of, contracts, MSAs, opportunities, employees that are now trained, qualified, and confident, to perform these projects and operate the equipment, it's going to happen at the pace you want it to, minus reality or plus reality, however you want to look at that. And you just got to kind of adjust to it. You know, what I put in the Excel spreadsheet, you know, is not what went to the universe. You know, that's what I put out.
I hate having to revise Excel spreadsheets.
It is. You're like, all right, version 25, V30,
V6,
V whatever, like, and then put all these in the archive folder and and then look back at the first version and realize, hey, we're way smarter now every now and again. But I read this I don't know what it was, something on Instagram that said, you know, that the point of the plan is not to know exactly what you're going to do. The point of the plan is to convince yourself you know what you're doing. Because you put a plan together, you put out timelines, you put out like this exact budget. Rarely does it work that way on the front end or the back end, and hopefully at some point you're like, man, we're doing really well. This thing is, if we and even when we built the plan, it's like, God, if we do half this good, you know, this is a raging success, you know. But Excel says if I do this,
Excel says this.
Oh, we did this. We did our payback was 90 days. You know,
we're at 89 days and we're not paid back. What's the
Excel
deal?
said.
Yeah, you know, the only other thing I've read about plans, I think Mike Tyson said was, everyone has a plan until they're hit in the face.
Yeah.
And again, if you go back to what you just said about a plan, it's interesting to kind of put those together. And if you say, you know, the plan is your way of convincing yourself you know what you're doing, even when you're hit in the face, you're like, I still know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You can always default back to that.
If you're going to fight Mike Tyson, you better have a damn good plan. At least you have a good enough plan that got you in the ring.
Still, man.
And people did it. People got in the ring with him.
That dude is terrifying still.
Yeah. And you may think, man, you know what? I think I can beat this guy too. I think I can go around with him. You got a plan of how you're going to last that period.
Well, every single one of those fighters that stepped in the ring thought they were going to win.
I don't know that every one of them did. You think every one of them did?
I don't know, man.
I think a few of them are like.
I think you have to have that mentality if you're going to do that. Some of them might have stepped in and said, I'm going to get knocked flat out cold for $1 million or whatever. But
I think we're the same age. We grew up with Mike Tyson and watching him fight. And every time he got in, there was no way anyone could beat him. You go in there,
Douglas beat him.
He did. But when that fight started, I don't think anyone in the world believed Buster Douglas could beat him.
No. Evander Holyfield beat him twice. Yeah. Lost an ear out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, I even remember watching the second Evander Holyfield fight thinking, he's going to get mauled. Evander Holyfield's going to get absolutely mauled, and he did not.
Yeah, did not.
So it's interesting, but
yeah, it's kind of like watching who's that fighter your daughter watched, Ronda Rousey when she lost. It was like that.
She was sort of a one-trick pony, right?
Yeah,
like she was super.
No one expected that to happen.
Judo.
No one expected that to happen. She got a kick, and that was ended her career.
Well, first of all, she fought Holly Holm, which is she was a very decorated boxer.
Yeah.
And Holly Holm came in there and just sort of evaded and pieced her up and frustrated her, and then she couldn't get a hold of her. And so
I probably shouldn't be talking about fighting with you and pretend like I have any intelligence.
Fighting. I know. I love fighting, and I watch a lot of fights.
I'm like, I can't participate in this discussion at that level.
She got kicked in the face, and it did alter her career drastically, and led to one of the great photographs ever.
Yeah, I love Ronda Rousey. I think she's fantastic.
I hear she's going to fight again.
Much. She did so much for women's fighting.
Oh yeah,
amazing.
Misha Tate.
Yeah,
all those women really did a lot for women's sports.
Savage. I love it.
The fighting side of it now.
Anyway.
I remember Dana White was steadfast. He was like, "We're never going to have women UFC fighters," and now it's huge.
Yeah,
and rightfully so. Those women are very skilled fighters.
Yeah, very talented.
So, what's next for Clean Recompression?
I think we're going to continue to.
How many units you have now?
We have 6.
6.
Yeah, we have 6 sets, compressors, generators. And right now I've got 3 heading up to the Mid-Atlantic, 3 sets heading up to the Mid-Atlantic, working on projects.
Nice.
Which is, it's nice to look out and see the yard half empty.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we gain, more customers and inherently more projects and things, and it's a beautiful day when you look out and the yard is completely empty and there's no equipment sitting in the yard. You're like, this is a nice day. This is a good day.
That's a good day.
Yeah. The LNG CNG business we had about 50, 60 trailers, CNG trailers, LNG equipment, and you pull into the yard and there's 1 or 2 filling up at the compressor station. And you're like, we're turning coin today. Mm-hmm. This is a good day. We're serving customers today, and the yard is empty. It's beautiful. But we're a few months into operational, so having it half empty, thrilled. So
you're coming up on a year.
we'll come up on a year in October of being of
Yeah.
launch. Yeah.
October what?
October 20th.
Nice.
Yeah, you don't forget that day easy. That day gets that day it happens kind of.
Yeah.
It sticks in your head. But yeah, so we're rolling up, and I think what we're going to do is kind of get utilization up, and then really focus on regions where we can really maintain good margins. So we'll probably open up a different operating center in different areas of the country, just so we can really shorten up our demobs.
Mm-hmm.
Time and cost.
Well, like you said, I mean, one of the big factors for the customers was how quickly can this happen?
Yeah.
Right. And I would imagine a huge factor in that would be mobilization.
Yeah, and it's a big cost. Even for us, it's a big cost, even though our cost is significantly less than any of our competitors. So we can really be competitive on that. But can we protect margins and have a healthy company that continue to innovate and create the next version? What's version 2 going to be?
Mm-hmm.
Just like with the vapor LNG system, we had version 1, version 2 was better. We have ideas right now for version 2. I think we'll learn more, in the next, 6 months to a year, what version 2 should be. But 2.0 will come out.
Yeah, I have no doubt in the next 6 months to a year, you're going to learn a tremendous amount. And I think you're right. I think we do need to revisit this in another year. And what are we doing now? And you never know, another year, you might have started another business or two. And
yeah,
just figured this was so easy to do. We'll do it again, right?
Yeah, I watch people like Josh Lowry, and he's got all these different things going on, and you're like, how do you do it, man? How do you keep everything? You have good people to do that. You can't do it by yourself.
Yeah,
you can't do it by yourself. And right now we're at a stage where we got to be lean and mean.
Yeah,
So a lot of I'm wearing half FRs right now and put on a polo to try and look good, and I didn't bring my jacket. You look good. Because this morning I'm out helping the guys put everything together and to take off and run these projects. So you're all over the place.
You know what, you got to do those things, especially when you're starting up, and we've all been there and seen that, and I think it's important too when you're starting a business for the people that you bring into the business to see that you're out there doing that as well. Because again, going back to what we said very early on in this, people just see where you are in life right now. Mm-hmm. And the people you bring into your company are going to see you as the owner, founder, those types of things, CEO. They're not necessarily going to understand everything it took for you to get there. They're just going to think probably you're some independently wealthy fellow that has done this a million times. And so I think it's important to see the owner out there doing those things. And like I said, I watched my dad own businesses, and he was always out doing those things, and made it a point to tell my brother and I, don't ever get to a point where you're unwilling to do the things you're asking others to do for you. And that stuck with me forever. So I don't think you're misplacing your efforts by doing that at all.
Yeah. Well, you go up through this process, and I tell Zach, who's my business partner, people we have these problems, but people dream about the success we have from the problems we're having now. Mm-hmm. People will look at one day, say, man, look what you built. Look what this is. It's like, well, you can dream about getting here, but I hope all your nightmares include all the pieces it takes to get here, because that is the refiner's fire of what it takes, of those little things, and then they're stepping stones. It's growth, it's knowledge, it's intelligence, and it all goes into that value of that service offering, that company, the individuals, so again, I look at any little business that's happening, a guy that can, whether it's, mowing lawns, which was my favorite first job I ever had.
It's a good one.
Oh, it was a fantastic job.
There's so much cash.
And you mow and look back, and the grass looks great.
I still mow my own yard today.
I do too.
Yeah,
I do too. I refuse.
I don't right now because it's all dead, because it's hot as 1,000 suns. But I still mow my own yard.
Yeah.
My wife's asked me before, why don't we just get someone to do it? Because I like doing it, and I can physically still do it. And also, my dad said, don't pay someone to do something you can do. And there's all kinds of other reasons, but more than that, I like looking back, and it's I can see instant feedback whether that line's straight or not, and I can fix that if I have to. So it's definitely rewarding. Well, man, we've been at it a while, but I'm excited to see where clean recompression goes. I think it's a great business model. I think that obviously version 2 is going to be amazing, and I look forward to catching back up in a year or so and finding out what's new and what we've learned in that year.
Me too. I appreciate it.
Again,
Thank
thanks
you.
for being a part of it. And if there's anything at all that I can do to help out, please let me know.
I will.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome.